Caroline Leavitt just finished her first ever White House press briefing. And let me tell you, it is so good to have competency in the White House yet again. So she opened this up with a mini monologue. And what I absolutely loved is that she got right down to business. She immediately revealed that those drone sightings that were happening in New Jersey, well, those apparently were all FAA approved research drones. Take a look at this.
Before I turn to questions, I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy. A statement from the President of the United States to start this briefing with some news. And with that, I will turn it over to questions.
So the first drone sighting in New Jersey was around November 19, give or take a few days. I just think about that for a moment. We had November, December, and most of January under Joe Biden. He could have revealed all of this. I mean, if these are FAA-approved drones, the FAA, the federal government, people knew about this. He could have gotten down to answers. So not only does this show the incompetence of Joe Biden himself, but it shows exactly how dysfunctional his administration was. Because yes, while these drones were no threat, there was fear, there was panic, there was apprehension. Now, obviously, that all turned out to be unfounded, but it is the president's job, if they have information that can calm the public. Why didn't Joe Biden release it? Oh yeah, because he's incompetent. So within just 8 days, because today is Trump's 8th day in office, Trump already got to the bottom of it. He found the answers, and once he found the answers, guess what? He revealed it to the public. So a great way to start that press conference. Now, part of what's made Trump's first week so iconic is that he's delivering on his promises in record time. And of course, the cornerstone of that is tackling the challenges of illegal immigration. So during this press briefing, we found out that ICE has already apprehended 3,500 illegal criminal aliens. And, well, the media is trying to wrestle with that terminology.
On immigration, of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
You made a point with the worst first. They all have a criminal record?
And welcome to the briefing.
If they broke our nation's laws, yes, they are criminal. Yes.
Thank you.
Easy as pie. And what I love is that there's no waffling back and forth. She's not uncertain about the answer. There is just clarity, because there is a clarity and vision, and that is thanks to the leadership of President Trump. They say that a fish rots from the head down. Well, the opposite is also true. If you have a strong leader at the very top, then that leadership trickles down and the rest of the team is empowered to do their jobs. So that is what this administration is showcasing right now. Before I show you the next clip, I just wanted to point out, did you notice that Caroline Leavitt is not flipping through a binder? She's not flipping through pages and reading from notes. She is saying this all from the top of her head because she has done her job. She is competent, and she got that position based on merit. Compare that to Joe Biden's presidency. Whenever KJP gave one of her press briefings, she came out with a binder like this big, and every time a question was asked, she was flipping through pages, going back and forth, trying to find her pre-scripted answer. It is so nice to see a press secretary who is so well versed in the issues that they are just able to answer the press's questions without having to rely on the script. So with that being said, take a look at this.
Start with the criminals. There are many, many criminals. NBC News has learned that ICE arrested 1,179 undocumented immigrants on Sunday, but nearly half of them, 566 of the migrants, appear to have no prior criminal record besides entering the country illegally. Is the president still focused exclusively, which is a civil crime, it's not criminal?
It's a federal crime.
So I'm asking though, he said he was going to focus on those violent offenders first. So is violent offenders no longer the predicate for these people to be
The
deported?
president has said countless times on the campaign trail, I've been with him at the rallies, I know you've been there covering them too, Peter, that he is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal. And so
To be
therefore,
clear,
you are
it's not
subject to
exclusively-
deportation.
I apologize for interrupting. So to be clear, it's not violent criminals do not receive precedence in terms of the deportations taking
The
place.
president has also said two things can be true at the same time. We want to deport illegal criminals, illegal immigrants from this country, but the president has said that, of course, the illegal criminal drug dealers, the rapists, the murderers, the individuals who have committed heinous acts on the interior of our country and who have terrorized law-abiding American citizens, absolutely, those should be the priority of ICE, but that doesn't mean that the other illegal criminals who entered our nation's borders are off the table.
Understood. Then let me ask you
Look,
a second.
the Trump administration is making the American people smarter again, and that is all proven by her answer right there. So when she said that both things can be true at the same time, that is what we call nuance. And you know what? The Democrats and the previous administration, Joe Biden's administration, they removed all nuance from public discourse. It was everything Orange Man bad, everything Trump touches is bad, everything Orange Man does and says and thinks and breathes and like everything associated with the Orange Man bad. It was just toddler rhetoric that they were trying to hammer down like we're preschoolers and kindergartners. Now, finally, we have an administration that respects us and thinks and knows that we have more than two brain cells that we can rub together and that we are capable of handling two different thoughts. Again, nuance. Two things can be true at the same time. It's not that difficult. So that's what I loved about that. Speaking of illegal immigration, here is the perfect example of how the media tries to dumb down the rhetoric or, in some cases, flat out, Matrim, you're having a great time with that toy, or just flat out gaslight us. So remember that TDA gang in Aurora, Colorado? So I'm showing this footage on the screen just to trigger everyone's memories. They took over this apartment complex. Well, during a raid this morning in New York City, they arrested the man on the very right, and he is the gang leader, the ringleader, who was behind all of this. So they have apprehended him. And then on top of that, they actually raided a TDA party. So according to a local ABC News affiliate in Denver, Colorado, this is what happened. TDA invitation only party, DEA raid in Adams County, ends in 49 arrests, including some Venezuelan gang members. Again, that is the local ABC News affiliate, and personally, I trust the local affiliates more because they don't have the national agenda and they are actually on the ground there. By the way, the DEA and ICE, they are saying the same thing. Well, here is how CBS News covered the exact same story. DEA raids party in Colorado arrests nearly 50 undocumented immigrants, some of whom are allegedly TDA gang members. That right there, the perfect example of how mainstream media bias and gaslighting works. I know we all know this. I know that we're aware that there is fake news out there, but it's up to us to call this stuff out and to expose it because it comes in all shapes, forms, and sizes. And if we're aware, then we can look out for it and spot it. And in fact, during the press briefing, Caroline Leavitt said, I know that a lot of you, referring to the media, lie, and if I see those lies, I'm going to call it out from here in the podium, so good on her. Now, the next question had to do with LIHEAP. For those of you unfamiliar, LIHEAP stands for Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, and there's been a lot of debate about that, and there's been a lot of debate because Trump's executive orders have cut back federal funding, and this is what Caroline Leavitt had to say about that.
President Trump, of course, ran one of the key policy items was that he was going to lower prices, lower the cost of everything from groceries, as he often said. But in many of the cases, it would seem that some of these moves could raise prices for real Americans on everything from low-income heating, that program, child care programs. Will nothing that the president's doing here in terms of the freeze in these programs raise prices on ordinary Americans?
What particular actions are you referring to that
I'm
would...
referring to LHEAP right now. That's the low-income heating program, for example. We can talk about, there's no clarity, so I could refer to a lot of them. We don't know what they are specifically. Can you tell us that LHEAP, the LIHEAP, is not one of those affected?
So you're asking a hypothetical based on programs that you can't even identify.
So that right there is the perfect example of how sneakily dishonest the media is. Because at first glance, at surface level, that question seems like it makes sense until you dive a little deeper. So what he was was asking is, isn't what you're doing with all these executive actions, isn't that going to raise prices? And then he points out LIHEAP as an example. Well, LIHEAP, again, Energy Assistance Program, if you put a pause on that funding, how does that raise energy prices? It doesn't. Does it make it hard for people who struggle and have low incomes to pay their energy bills? Yes, but it doesn't actually raise prices. Whether or not we should cut funding to LIHEAP, whether or not that is the federal government's job, that is an entirely different conversation. But what he's doing there is conflating these two issues, because clearly the media has a narrative to push. So they're trying to already, Trump's only been in office 8 days, but they're already trying to push this narrative that Trump is responsible for inflation. They're already ragging on him about egg prices, which, by the way, were going up under Joe Biden's watch, which, by the way, avian flu, bird flu were spreading under Joe Biden's watch. Yet they're all trying to blame Trump for inflation, which they said wasn't even happening the last 4 years. So that question right there was phrased in such a way to try to get a hit from the Trump administration. Again, if you want to ask, hey, is it right? Is it wrong to put a pause on funding for LIHEAP? You can ask that, but that is a separate question. That has nothing to do with raising prices and causing prices to go up for everyone else. That is just a false conclusion, a faulty use of logic, and shame on him. I think I'm not inside his brain, but I would suspect that he knew what he was doing with that question. Now, what is very clear is that there has been a pause on these big programs, but those individual assistance programs are not being affected. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, anything that goes to a person directly, any check that goes to an individual person, there has been no pause on that. Everything that's been paused is a program, and Karoline Leavitt made that very clear to the mainstream media that was in the room.
I just have a substantive question. Yesterday, the White House Office of Management and Budget directed across the board freeze, with some exceptions for individual assistance, we understand, to federal grants. It's caused a lot of confusion around the country among Head Start providers, among providers services to homeless veterans, Medicaid providers, states saying they're having trouble accessing the portal. Could you help us clear up some of the confusion, give some certainty to folks? And also, is that uncertainty, how does that uncertainty service the president's voters?
Well, I think there's only uncertainty in this room amongst the media. There's no uncertainty in this building. So let me provide the certainty and the clarity that all of you need. This is not a blanket pause on federal assistance and grant programs from the Trump administration. Individual assistance, that includes, I'm not naming everything that's included, but just to give you a few examples, Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, food stamps, welfare benefits, assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause. And I want to make that very clear to any Americans who are watching at home who may be a little bit confused about some of the media reporting. This administration, if you are receiving individual assistance from the federal government, you will still continue to receive that. However, it is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That is something that President Trump campaigned on. That's why he has launched DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, who is working alongside OMB. And that's why OMB sent out this memo last night, because the president signed an executive order directing OMB to do just this. And the reason for this is to ensure that every penny that is going out the door is not conflicting with the executive orders and actions that this president has taken. So what does this pause mean? It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness across our federal bureaucracy and agencies. No more funding for Green New Deal social engineering policies. Again, people who are receiving individual assistance, you will continue to receive that. And President Trump is looking out for you by issuing this pause because he is being good steward of your taxpayer dollars.
One of Karoline Leavitt's strengths, which I think was on full display there, is that she can be tough with the media without being nasty. And the media thinks they can do that. You know, whenever they're at these press briefings, Acosta is the perfect example of this, who just quit CNN or was fired. It's unclear what happened. A lot of people think he quit because there was talk behind the scenes, but we don't publicly know. But the media, they thought they were being tough with Trump, but in reality, they were being really nasty. They were being dishonest. But right here, what you saw Caroline Leavitt just level with the press while being respectful, while maintaining decorum, and she just answered the heart of the question. Now, what Trump has done, and he sort of campaigned on this, but what I just love about what's happening right now is that he's forcing a national conversation about the role of the federal government. Because someone like me, who is a independent constitutional conservative, I'm not a registered Republican, though I identify as more conservative. A lot of us believe that the federal government is too large. We live in a federalist system, and what I believe is that because the federal government is so large, states have been passing the buck. A lot of these issues should be relegated and given to the states. But for whatever reason, the federal government has gotten involved, and they've been terrible at running many of these programs. And what I think is actually going to happen is when these programs, if they resume, are either going to be better, but if they don't resume, then states are going to compete with each other to come up with their own solutions for their own citizens. And that is going to strengthen the country as a whole. That is going to strengthen each individual state, because each state is going to compete with each other. And it's sort of like the free market, except it's between state governments, which I think can only be a good thing. And if anything, at the very least, it'll at least help wake people up, which will lead to a more informed and more involved citizenry, which is a good thing for the fabric of our country. The issue with the federal government is it has a tendency to lead to bloat, lead to waste. And today we found out one of the craziest forms of waste I think I've ever heard. Apparently, the federal government was getting ready to send $50 million worth of condoms to Gaza. Yeah, think about that for a second. Fortunately, President Trump put a stop to all of that.
With the president's agenda, then the Office of Management and Budget will review those policies. I think this is a very responsible measure. Again, the past 4 years, we've seen the Biden administration spend money like drunken sailors. It's a big reason we've had an inflation crisis in this country, and it's incumbent upon this administration to make sure, again, that every penny is being accounted for honestly.
Why impose this pause with so little notice? Why not give organizations more time to plan for the fact that they are about to lose, in some cases, really crucial federal funding, at least for a period of time?
There was notice. It was the executive order that the president signed. There's also a freeze on hiring, as you know, a regulatory freeze, and there's also a freeze on foreign aid. And this is, again, incredibly important to ensure that this administration is taking into consideration how hard the American people are working. And their tax dollars actually matter to this administration. You know, just during this pause, DOGE and OMB have actually found that there was $37 million that was about to go out the door to the World Health Organization, which is an organization, as you all know, that President Trump, with the swipe of his pen in that executive order, is no longer wants the United States to be a part of. So that wouldn't be in line with the president's agenda. DOGE and OMB also found that there was about to be 50 million taxpayer dollars that went out the door to fund condoms in Gaza. That is a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. So that's what this pause is focused on, being good stewards of tax dollars.
While so much is going on policy-wise, while so much is going on when it comes to immigration, foreign affairs, yada, 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 at the end of the day, as James Carville said, it's the economy, stupid. And what people want to know about is how are your policies going to affect my pocketbook? And so knowing all of that, the media, while they talked about immigration, while they talked about energy and all those other topics, the media kept coming back to prices. And so they brought up egg prices, which, let me reiterate, started going up under Joe Biden, and the media told us weren't going up. Caroline had a great answer for that.
Christian Day Talk.
Thanks, Caroline. Just real quick, you mentioned the inflation executive order the president signed, but egg prices have skyrocketed since President Trump took office. So what specifically is he doing to lower those costs for Americans?
Really glad you brought this up, because there is a lot of reporting out there that is putting the onus on this White House for the increased cost of eggs. I would like to point out to each and every one of you that in 2024, when Joe Biden was in the Oval Office, or upstairs in the residence sleeping, I'm not so sure, egg prices increased 65% in this country. We also have seen the cost of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration. As far as the egg shortage, what's also contributing to that is that the Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens, which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply, which is leading to the shortage. So I will leave you with this point. This is an example of why it's so incredibly important that the Senate moves swiftly to confirm all of President Trump's nominees, including his nominee for the United States Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who is already speaking with Kevin Hassett, who's leading the economic team here at the White House, on how we can address the egg shortage in this country. As for costs, I laid out the plethora of ways that President Trump has addressed saving costs for the American people over the past week. He looks forward to continuing to doing that in the days ahead. Thank you guys so much.
Again, you could see her shuffling her papers there, which she was shuffling them and getting them together as she was about to exit the room because she didn't have to look at them. She wasn't flipping through her binder. She just knew all of this because she is competent. She's good at her job. She knows the key points that she needs to communicate with not just the media, but quite frankly, directly to people like you and I. And that's what I absolutely love. So over on MSNBC, this happened a few days ago, just to clarify. One of their panelists didn't just blame Donald Trump, didn't just blame the Trump administration for the increase in egg prices. He specifically blamed white people. Yeah, that's right. So for all the Democrats out there who say that there's no such thing as reverse racism, who says that it's impossible to be racist against white people because they're the majority in this country. By the way, they won't be the majority for long if the demographic trends are to be believed. But I just wanted to point out that over on MSNBC, they are airing on national television what to me appears to be blatant racism.
Specifically this week, some have described it as a shock and awe campaign, which might be what it is. I guess the danger is in covering Trump 2.0, how do we deal with this? Because these things have real implications. Everything Joyce just described, people are affected by this. This is not an abstraction.
We tried to tell y'all. I mean, Ali, I wrote specifically about this issue, what he was going to do to the Department of Justice multiple times during the election cycle, because as you pointed out in your open, this was all written down. So I don't like the shock and awe version of this, because if you had been paying attention, they wrote it down. They told you exactly what they were going to do and exactly how you were going to do it. And a majority of white people voted for this. This is the disgusting version of America that people want. And oh, by the way, eggs are still more expensive. So you didn't even get that. Great job, white folks. In terms of how we cover it as a media or as a media group, right?
You know, I really thought I was going to play that whole clip, but I can't because it's going to send my blood pressure through the roof. And I'm trying to be healthy. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to focus. You know, just I don't need that negativity in my life. Now, shock and awe, the reason it's called shock and awe is because we actually have a president who is delivering on his promises. That is why so many people, love him or hate him, you can say what you want about his personality or about mean tweets, but at the end of the day, this is the first president I can remember who's actually kept his word. What he said on the campaign trail, he's doing. And I think that's where the shock and awe is coming from, because people aren't used to that. You have politicians who go out there, who stick to these scripts, who poll and focus group test every little thing that they say, and they go out there and they're just these puppets for whatever interest groups there are. And then here comes Trump, a one-man wrecking ball who just says what he thinks, means what he says, and does what he says he was going to do. There's nothing wrong with that. And then for that man, whatever his name is, I don't care to know it. I don't care to learn it because I think he's just a crazy person. But for him to blame white people, how insulting, especially as a minority who voted for Trump. And let's not forget that Trump, for set records, had the high in 2024, had the highest African American vote, black vote of any Republican, highest Hispanic vote, highest. And you can go down every single demographic. Trump went up records for a Republican, maybe not among white people, but certainly among minorities. But as always, all of that is just my analysis and commentary. That is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So what was your favorite moment from today's press briefing? A lot of great moments to choose from. For me personally, I really loved when Caroline Leavitt just laid down the law and she's like, you know what, they're all criminals. They broke the law by coming here illegally. To me, it's not about being mean. It's not about dehumanizing, but it's just having the clarity to see the difference between legal, illegal, right, and wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we need to agree that, I mean, if we're going to abide by the Constitution, if we're going to abide by the rule of law, then we actually have to follow the law. If you want to change the law, Democrats, well, instead of ignoring the law, go to Congress, write a law, get it passed through the system. You guys can do it. Like, there's a process for that. There's a reason the Constitution is called a living document. But instead, what the other side wants to do is just ignore the rule of law and just do whatever they want. Personally, I'm not going to tolerate it anymore, and I don't think y'all are either. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Please be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.